What makes Tesla so different from other car companies? In the past 24 hours, we've gotten evidence from Green the Only and Tesla itself why. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So I'm going to start with a Tesla vehicle safety video that many of you might have already seen. I'm going to talk about it a little bit at the end, but my primary point about this is just to get this out there. I don't think people know enough about how Tesla really engineers their vehicles for safety. And as a personal anecdote, my wife was super happy to see about this as we just purchased a Model 3, and she was extremely happy to see how safe the vehicle was. So without further ado, I'm going to play the entire video. I don't think that Tesla will mind.
Hey everyone, Lars here in the Tesla Engineering Crash Safety Lab. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what makes our cars so safe. Passive safety is what happens after you get in an accident. We think about that from the beginning of a design. And what we're trying to do is absorb as much energy from whatever object you hit before it gets to the cabin. At Tesla, we always like to think we have two rules. Number one, protect the occupant. Number two, protect the battery. See rule number one, protect the occupant. The way we do that is in a progressive nature of crash structure. This is what a car looks like underneath the skin. You have your bumper beam, your crush can, and then you have what we just debuted in Austin is our new front underbody casting. And what happens when you get into an accident is first the bumper beam crushes up, it progressively crushes up the crush can, absorbing the low speed energy under 20 miles per hour, and then we get into our casting. The design is such that the ribs at the beginning of the casting are thinner than the ones at the back, and we progressively increase them so that we have controlled crushing of the entire system as it goes up before it gets to the cabin here. But what else you'll notice is there's multiple load paths. This is a higher load path for compatibility with other vehicles on the road. Sometimes we need a lower load path if you hit a different sized object. There's space vertically to transfer the load not only through the crush rail, but also through our subframe, which pulls the drive unit down and out of the way from the cabin behind you and out of the way of the battery. But we don't just do that in a vertical sense. We also do it laterally. Your main crush rail is great if you hit something up front, but if you hit a pole or a tree just outside that crush rail, there's nothing there to absorb an energy in most cars. We put our lower load path just outside that crush rail, and we actually angle it so that if you hit something here, we start to absorb the energy, and then we push the car away from whatever object you hit to make sure that you're not getting crushed into that object. The backup structure is what protects the cabin after that, and we use both our door rings, the glass, and our battery to provide structure to hold all of this energy it's crushing up. But one of the things that's unique about all of Tesla's is the battery is super low. Our lower center of gravity, in addition to our suspension, means our vehicles are less likely to roll over. So let's take a look at what a car looks like after a crash test and how these systems all work. So this here is actually a really special car. This is a car that was crash tested at NHTSA for our 5-star rating on Model Y. And as you can see, all that energy was absorbed up front here, stopping really at the cabin like I was talking about. And we do such a good job of that you can actually open the door and get out. And as you can see, aside from a little bit of white paint and some airbags blown off, the cabin looks like it was untouched. And that means the occupant inside has all of the room that they had before the accident to survive the accident.
So this is a pretty amazing video, right? We're talking about something where Tesla has over-engineered their vehicles, and the NHTSA crash car, which they're very proud of, and obviously they should be, shows just how amazing this is. You have a full frontal collision, and the cabin where the person is actually completely intact still, and they can still open the doors, which means that the cabin itself was not crushed at all during the actual accident. So all of that load was absorbed by the front end of the car, and of course you don't have a gigantic engine in there, gigantic gas engine in there that takes up a lot of that room and is very heavy and can, impinge on the cabin in an accident. With an ICE car, you have an electric motor, but even that, the design is that the motor itself slides under the vehicle, under the passenger cabin, and it gets ejected to the ground or something if it needs to. And then you've got the lower load rails, which actually push the car out of the way if you hit a tall, object like a light pole or a tree or something like that. So all of these things are designed to keep the inhabitants of the cabin in as good a shape as possible. and obviously to keep the battery pack in as good a shape as possible, because of course you don't want the batteries punctured, that can cause a fire. And of course, as Tesla has engineered it, the battery pack itself is underneath the cabin where the occupants of the vehicle are. So as you protect the occupants of the vehicle, you also protect the battery pack, which in turn protects the occupants of the vehicle. And Lars doesn't talk about this in this video, but they've actually worked out a system where the hood of the car actually helps a pedestrian in a car-pedestrian collision to keep the pedestrian from striking their head as violently as they do in other cases. So Tesla engineers are constantly working on safety. When Elon Musk says that safety is job one at Tesla, he actually really means that. I think that's beyond everything else. Obviously, they want to have really good manufacturing techniques, they want to have good efficiency, etc., but they're really focused on safety. And I thought this video was worth, showing to all of my viewers because it's just amazing stuff. So if you have a Tesla, congratulations, you have an incredibly safely engineered vehicle. If you don't have a Tesla yet, you should seriously consider getting one. And from that, let's move to a thread by Green the Only. And if you're not following Green the Only, it's at Green the Only on Twitter. You really need to be doing that because he really digs in. He gets in and looks at the code that Tesla has and the output that it has, and he makes just amazing discoveries. And this was one of the ones that I would never have guessed at, but it shows just how far Tesla's navigation team, I hesitate to say full self-driving because this isn't really AI, but it's the way that they deal with their navigation data and the basic Google Maps, and they turn it into something magical. So let's go ahead and read through this thread. So I decided to look into how Tesla does alternate routes. I know, late, fully expecting to see they just get a few alternatives from Google and that's it. And nope, there's nothing like it. So alternate routes are something relatively new to Tesla. It's when you get into the map and you say, I want to go from like here to Nashville, Tennessee or something, and it gives you the primary route that it thinks is the best choice and then maybe two alternate routes. That is actually much more sophisticated than you might think. So Green the Only, and I of course as well, and probably most of you thought that they just took the alternate routes from Google Maps and they just projected that for you, but that is not the case. And Green the Only says there is nothing like it out there, in the navigation world. So continuing on, instead they grab a route from Google if online navigation enabled, and then they feed that into Tesla Maps service in the cloud, and that map service returns possible alternate routes deduced by unknown means, but that's not all. So interestingly enough, this means that Tesla has their own cloud-based navigation system, and that is really interesting in its own right. Green the Only doesn't touch on this, but it does mean that Tesla could eventually replace Google Maps with their own, because it sounds like they already have something that's working pretty sophisticatedly, in the cloud, and that you're already communicating with the cloud when you decide to navigate to some place. But here's where it gets really cool. A lot more interesting is that in addition to that, they also query that service for, quote, what are the parking lot outlines at my location? And hey, for this route I have, what else do I need to know? So that means that Tesla is looking at your, navigation. If you say you want to go to a shopping center or something, it actually is looking at the parking lot as well. But also there are other things that Tesla's internal maps have that they can query. As Green the Only says, this last part is interesting because it tells the car in great detail map corrections like, quote, there's a stop sign here, quote, crosswalk there, with great accuracy. Also other useful information like lane information, directions of travel and whatnot, and speed to show you yellow, red path. I think what he means by the yellow and red paths are maybe when you're doing route navigation and it gives you different colors for the different routes and how long they're going to take. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that. But the really intriguing part about all of this is that if Tesla's map data, if the fleet discovers that there's a stop sign there that Google Maps does not have, it actually includes that data when it sends back the information to your vehicle. Thus, when people say, my car took the same route as before and this time it drove better, the map updates like this help immensely and is probably why. And overall, it seems to be updating certain elements in near real time. This also includes rough patches of road and such. And if you don't know, Model S and Model X now have access to rough road data because they have air suspension, and they will change the suspension of the vehicle as you approach areas of rough roads or potholes or things like that. So this is really cool, and that's how they do it. And I think this explains why a lot of people think that Teslas are actually learning to drive as you drive them. So the neural network models, like your full self-driving beta neural network model, is not updated in your vehicle. It's only updated in the cloud when Tesla rolls out new versions. But the reason why people might think that the car is learning is if you drive the same route over and over again, what Tesla is doing is interactively updating to the cloud interesting things that are going on. So rough patches of road, stop signs that are there, construction zones that didn't exist yesterday, all of that kind of stuff is being fed into the cloud data, and that's then being put back into your navigation data when you start a drive. And therefore, I think a lot of people think that the car is learning, because in a sense it actually is, but it's actually the navigation system that's learning, not the full self-driving system. Continuing on, the car also feeds things like detected speed limits and real-time speeds there in return every 2 minutes or so. Certainly this helps keep maps a lot more current than even regularly updated maps in cars are, and only relevant sections at that. Basically, it's like a Waze service, and if you don't know that, that's a company that was bought out by Google that actually does a lot of interactive map updates and things. If you've driven with Waze, you know what they're talking about. Anyway, basically it's like a Waze service, but for autopilot. Here's the output I got from the route from one longitude latitude to another longitude latitude the other day on pastebin.com. Unfortunately, when I click this link, it doesn't actually link to anything, which is a bummer, but anyway, we can figure out the rest from the next tweet below. The edge IDs are relative to Tesla in-car maps, so the car knows what property to update. And if you pay close attention, a bunch of elements presented list Tesla as the source. So a couple of quick screen grabs of the output of the code here. You can see autopilot 3, begin shape index controlled access, edge ID. Obviously from looking at this, this is a numeric code that identifies the edge ID. I'm not exactly sure why the slashes are there. It's Tesla's internal kind of thing. End shape index 23, extended range information, offset 124, source Tesla telemetry, which means this was actually a Tesla car or multiple cars that identified this. And then the type below, that's the obvious thing you can figure out, is this is a crosswalk. So this is something that was identified by Tesla vehicles as a crosswalk. And if we go over to the next one here, you know, same basic things. The edge ID changes, which means that that is the indexing kind of thing. And this, in this case, is a stop sign, which was identified by Tesla telemetry. So basically Teslas are out there. When you're driving, it's collecting that data, and it's not useless data. It's uploading it to the cloud. If it recognizes something that it doesn't know about from Google Maps, it sticks it in, it gives it an edge ID, and it tells it what it is, right? The type is a stop sign. Also very human readable. It's very easy for us to look at the output and, you know, manually figure out what's going on here. But this is really, really cool stuff. And then finally, Green's takeaway. By the way, I guess important corollary that we mostly knew about is autopilot performs better when you have a route set, because if you don't, it does not fetch this, quote, information about route ahead. Keep this in mind with your testing. So if you don't know, you can just engage autopilot at any time, just driving down the road, and it will drive down the road and, you know, follow traffic. It won't make any turns or anything because it doesn't know where to go. But if you give it a destination, like saying I'm going to the grocery store, or I'm going home, or I'm going to work, or whatever that thing is, it's going to drive better because it's going to fetch the navigation data and all of those little mini updates and edge cases and things like that that it has internally stored in the cloud. It's going to download that to your car, and it's going to update your car so that it drives even better than it would without that data. So between Tesla over-engineering their vehicles for safety and Tesla over-engineering their navigation system for a better experience, the company is really going above and beyond for us customers. And I, for one, really appreciate it. Thanks, Tesla. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my Patreon patrons and my YouTube channel members. Thank you all so much for the support for this little YouTube channel. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.